The mop squeaked against the polished floor of Station Gamma 7, leaving streaks of soapy water in its wake. Thomas Chen pushed the yellow bucket forward with one foot while his hands worked the mop in steady, practiced circles. He had been cleaning this station for 3 years now, and he knew every tile, every corner, every stubborn stain that refused to come out no matter how hard he scrubbed. Around him, the station bustled with activity. Diplomats from a dozen worlds hurried past in their fancy clothes, speaking languages he didn't understand. Traders hauled cargo on floating pallets. Security officers in crisp uniforms patrolled the corridors. None of them ever looked at Thomas. To them, he was invisible. Just another human doing a job nobody else wanted. That was fine with Thomas. He liked the quiet. He liked the simple rhythm of his work. Clean the floors, empty the trash, fix what broke. No complications, no drama, just honest work for honest pay. The station sat at the edge of the convergence zone, where 5 different galactic powers met to trade and talk. Species from across known space came here. The tall, proud Vacrosians with their blue skin and 4 arms. The insectoid Chirruk, who clicked and buzzed when they spoke. The crystalline Lumens, who barely seemed solid at all, and dozens more. Humans were the newest members of the galactic community. They had only joined 15 years ago, after their little yellow star finally got noticed by a passing trade vessel. Most species didn't think much of humans. They were short-lived and soft. They had no natural weapons, no thick hides, no ability to breathe in multiple atmospheres. They were weak. So humans did the jobs others wouldn't. They cleaned, they cooked, they fixed broken machines and scraped out clogged pipes. Thomas didn't mind. The money was good, and Earth needed every credit they could send home. He was wringing out his mop when he heard the screams. Thomas looked up. At the far end of the corridor, people were running. Not walking fast, not hurrying, running. Full sprint, knocking each other aside in their panic. Then he saw why. A dragon stood at the entrance to the main hall. Not a metaphor, not a creature that looked sort of like a dragon. An actual dragon, 30 feet long from nose to tail, with scales that shimmered between green and gold. Her wings were folded against her sides, but Thomas could see they would span the entire corridor if she opened them. Smoke curled from her nostrils with each breath. Station security surrounded her, weapons drawn. The commander, a Vacrosian named Krell, stood in front of his troops with all 4 arms raised. Thomas couldn't hear what they were saying from this distance, but he could see Krell's face. The commander was terrified. Thomas should have run. Every instinct screamed at him to drop the mop and sprint for the nearest exit. Dragons were apex predators, capable of burning entire ships to slag. They were isolationists who lived in the deep dark, the unmapped regions beyond civilized space. They never came to stations like this. Never. But Thomas didn't run. He set down his mop carefully, leaning it against the wall so it wouldn't fall. Then he walked toward the dragon. The few people still in the corridor stared at him like he had lost his mind. Maybe he had, but something about the dragon's posture bothered him. She wasn't attacking. She wasn't even threatening. Her head was lowered, her tail was tucked. She looked desperate. As he got closer, he could hear the conversation. "You must leave immediately," Krell was saying. His voice shook despite his best efforts to sound authoritative. "This is neutral territory. We cannot harbor you." The dragon spoke, and her voice was like thunder rolling across mountains. "I seek only aid. My children are dying." "That is unfortunate," Krell said, taking a step back. "But it is not our concern. The treaty forbids." "The treaty," the dragon interrupted, and now there was heat in her voice, literal heat that made the air shimmer, "was written by cowards who hide behind words while innocents suffer." Thomas pushed through the security line. The officers were too shocked to stop him. He walked right up to Krell and cleared his throat. "Sir, maybe I can help?" Krell spun around, all 4 eyes wide. "Chen, What are you doing here? Get back. This is a security matter. I can hear that, sir. Thomas looked past Krell at the dragon. Up close, she was even more magnificent and more terrifying. One of her teeth was longer than his arm. Ma'am, what's wrong with your children? The dragon's head swiveled toward him. Her eyes were gold with vertical slits for pupils. They fixed on Thomas with an intensity that made his knees weak. For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then she spoke, and her voice was softer now, gentler. You are human. Yes, ma'am. The prey species, the ones with no claws or armor. Thomas shrugged. That's us. And you approach me without fear? Oh, I'm scared, Thomas admitted. I'm terrified, actually. But you said your kids are sick. I've got kids back on Earth. If they were sick and I needed help, I'd hope someone would listen. The dragon's eyes narrowed. Then slowly, she lowered her massive head until her snout was level with Thomas's face. Her breath washed over him, hot and smelling of sulfur and stars. My name is Kalithra, she said. 3 days ago my children fell ill, all 5 of them. They cannot eat, they cannot sleep. Their scales burn with fever, and they cry out in pain. I have tried everything I know. I have flown to 3 stations seeking help. At each one they turn me away. They say dragons are too dangerous, too violent. They say they cannot risk it. What do you think caused it? Thomas asked. I do not know. They were fine, then suddenly they were not. We live in the shattered belt, among the asteroid fields. Perhaps they ate something toxic. Perhaps they were exposed to radiation. I cannot tell. Behind Thomas, Krell was hissing commands to his troops. Thomas ignored him. He was thinking. Sudden onset. All 5 kids at once. Environmental trigger. The symptoms sounded like poisoning, maybe radiation poisoning. I'm not a doctor, Thomas said slowly, but I know people who might be able to help. The problem is they're back on Earth, and Earth is 4 jumps from here. I will take you there, Kalithra said immediately. My ship is fast. Dragon ships can't interface with our docking systems, Krell interrupted, and we cannot allow a human to leave with a dragon. The liability alone— Sir, with respect, I don't work for you, Thomas said. He'd never talked back to anyone in authority before. It felt strange, liberating. I work for the station maintenance contract, and I've got 3 weeks of vacation saved up. I'm taking it now. Krell's face turned a darker shade of blue. Chen, if you leave this station with that creature, you will never work in galactic commerce again. I will personally see to it. Thomas thought about his apartment back on Earth, his sister and her kids, the bills piling up because Earth was still poor, still struggling to find its place among the stars. He thought about every diplomat and official who had walked past him without seeing him, every time someone had made a joke about useless humans. Then he looked at Kalithra, at the desperate hope in her golden eyes. That's okay, sir, Thomas said. Some things are more important than a job. The dragon made a sound deep in her throat. It might have been a laugh. It might have been a sob. Human Thomas Chen, will you truly help me? Yes, ma'am. Let me just grab my toolkit. If we're going to Earth, we'll need to pick up some medical supplies along the way, and I'll need to make some calls. Thomas turned and walked back to his custodial closet, aware that every eye in the hall was watching him. His hands shook as he opened the door and started gathering supplies. Toolkit, emergency med kit, his portable comm unit, a change of clothes, some food bars. He was really doing this. He was leaving the station with a dragon to save her children. His supervisor, a perpetually annoyed Chirrut named Zix, found him 5 minutes later. Chen, I heard what happened. Have you lost your mind? Probably, Thomas said, stuffing items into his maintenance bag. Zix, I need you to do me a favor. My sister's contact info is in the system. If something happens to me, make sure she gets my last paycheck, okay? Zix's antenna drooped. You actually think you will survive this? I don't know. But those kids will die if nobody helps. And apparently, nobody else will. Humans, Zix muttered. Always so emotional, so irrational. Yeah, Thomas agreed. We're the worst. But Zix grabbed his arm with one spindly limb. The worst, and also, sometimes, the best. Be careful, Thomas Chen. Thomas nodded. He slung his bag over his shoulder and walked back to the main hall. Kalithra waited, her massive form perfectly still. The security officers had backed off, probably because Krell had realized that shooting a dragon on a neutral station would cause a diplomatic incident that would make everyone's life miserable. I'm ready, Thomas said. Kalithra lowered herself to the ground. Climb onto my back, between my shoulders. Hold the ridge scales. Thomas had ridden a motorcycle once. This was nothing like that. The dragon's scales were warm under his hands and surprisingly smooth. He found a spot between her shoulder blades where the ridge scales formed natural handholds and settled in. Kalithra rose. Thomas's stomach lurched. Even standing still, he was now 20 feet off the ground. If you fall, Kalithra said, I will catch you. Do not fear. Right, no fear. Got it. The dragon turned and walked toward the docking bay. People scattered before her like leaves in a wind. Thomas saw faces staring up at him. Some were shocked, some were angry. A few looked almost admiring. The docking bay doors opened onto the black expanse of space. Kalithra's ship was unlike anything Thomas had ever seen. It wasn't a ship in the traditional sense. It was organic, grown rather than built, all flowing curves and crystalline structures. It looked like a flower made of starlight. Hold tight, Kalithra said. Then she leaped. They fell into space. Thomas bit back a scream. Then the dragon's wings snapped open, catching the void like solar sails. And they weren't falling anymore. They were flying. The station shrank behind them, becoming a tiny point of light, then nothing at all. Stars wheeled overhead. The universe stretched out in every direction, infinite and beautiful and terrifying. Thomas Chen, Janitor, had just left everything he knew behind. He was heading into the deep dark with a dragon, to save children he'd never met, children of a species that most of the galaxy feared. His supervisor was right. Humans were irrational. But as Kalithra's ship enveloped them in warmth and light, as they jumped into faster-than-light transit with a lurch that made Thomas's teeth rattle, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. Somewhere out there, 5 young dragons were dying, and maybe, just maybe, a human janitor could help them. The flight through the first jump point felt like being squeezed through a tube of lightning. Thomas's vision blurred, his stomach turned inside out, and for a moment he couldn't tell which way was up. Then it was over, and they were back in normal space, though normal was a relative term. They were in a region Thomas didn't recognize, with stars clustered so thick they looked like clouds. Kalithra's ship was bigger on the inside than the outside. The organic walls glowed with soft bioluminescence, providing just enough light to see by. The dragon had shown Thomas to a small chamber where he could rest between jumps. It had no furniture, but the floor was covered in something soft and warm that adjusted to his body when he sat. He pulled out his comm unit and started making calls. The first was to his sister back on Earth. Tommy? Her face appeared on the screen, confused. It's 3 in the morning here. What's wrong? Hey, Julie, sorry about the time. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to not ask questions. Her eyes narrowed. Julie was 6 years older than Thomas and had basically raised him after their parents died. She knew when he was serious. What happened? I'm calling in every favor we have. I need you to contact Dr. Yuki Tanaka. She's the xenobiologist who helped with the Chiric plague last year. Tell her I need information on dragon biology, specifically pediatric toxicology and radiation sickness symptoms. Dragons? Tommy, what? No questions, remember? Just tell her it's urgent, life or death urgent. Then I need you to contact the Port Authority and get clearance for a non-standard ship to enter Earth orbit. It'll be flagged as Dragon Class. Julie was fully awake now. You're bringing a dragon to Earth? Not to Earth, exactly. Just into orbit. Look, I can't explain right now, but 5 kids are dying. I'm trying to help. His sister stared at him for a long moment. Then she sighed. You always did have more heart than sense. Okay, I'll make the calls. But Tommy, be careful. Dragons aren't like other species. They don't think like we do. I know. Love you, Julie. Love you too, you idiot. The call ended. Thomas made 3 more calls, pulling strings he barely knew he had. A former co-worker who now worked at a medical supply depot. A trader who owed him a favor after Thomas had fixed his ship's life support system for free. A human diplomat who had once shared an elevator with Thomas and actually bothered to learn his name. By the time they made the second jump, Thomas had assembled the skeleton of a plan. It wasn't a good plan. It had about 1,000 ways to go wrong, but it was better than nothing. He found Kalithra in the ship's command chamber. The dragon was merged with the ship's systems, her scales plugged into crystalline nodes that pulsed with data. Her eyes were closed. Ma'am, I don't mean to interrupt, but I need to know more about your children's symptoms. The dragon's eyes opened. She disconnected from the ship with a soft hiss of depressurizing air. They burn. Their scales crack and bleed. They cannot hold down food. They sleep but find no rest, crying out from nightmares. The youngest, Keth, no longer recognizes me. Thomas pulled out his comm unit and started recording. How long between when they were healthy and when symptoms started? Hours. We had gone hunting in the shattered belt. When we returned to our nest, they were well. By evening, they were ill. Were you with them the whole time? No. I left them to scout ahead. They played among the asteroids. Kalithra's voice cracked. I should have been watching them. You can't watch kids every second, Thomas said. They get into things. It's what kids do. What were they playing near? There is an old battlefield in that sector. From the Vacrosian-Chirrut War, a century ago. Many dead ships. We often hunt there. The scavenger creatures that nest in the wrecks are good eating. Thomas's mind raced. Old battlefield, radiation, toxic materials, chemical weapons. The Vacrosian-Chirrut War had been brutal. Both sides had used weapons that were now banned by Galactic Treaty. Did they go inside any of the wrecks? I do not know. They may have. The wrecks are forbidden to dragons, too unstable, but children do not always listen. No, Thomas agreed. They really don't. He made another call. This one was to an old friend from his military days, before he'd left Earth to work in space. The friend had gone on to become a specialist in hazardous materials. Jimmy, it's Tom. I need you to look something up for me. 2 hours later, Thomas had his answer. The symptoms match 3 different chemical agents used during the war. All 3 were nerve agents that affected the nervous system and caused exactly the symptoms Kalithra had described. The good news was that all 3 had antidotes. The bad news was that dragon physiology was different enough from other species that the standard antidotes might not work. That's where Dr. Tanaka came in. By the time they made the 3rd jump, Thomas was exhausted. He'd been awake for 18 hours straight, making calls, researching, planning, but they were close now. One more jump would bring them to Earth's system. He found a moment to rest in the chamber Kalithra had given him. The walls pulsed gently, almost like breathing. He closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he woke, Kalithra was standing over him. Except standing wasn't quite right. She was too big for the chamber, so her head was lowered and angled sideways to fit through the door. You sleep like the dead, she observed. I thought humans were light sleepers. Thomas sat up, rubbing his eyes. Usually we are. How long was I out? 3 hours. We are approaching your homeworld. Your people have given us permission to enter orbit, but they warn that any hostile action will be met with force. Thomas snorted. Yeah, that sounds like us. Ready to shoot first and ask questions later. A wise policy when dealing with dangerous species. You're not dangerous. I mean, you could be, but you're not. Kalithra tilted her head. How do you know? Because you came to a station full of people and didn't hurt anyone, even though you were desperate. Because you listened to a janitor when everyone else just saw a threat. Because you're a mom trying to save your kids. The dragon made that sound again, the one that might have been a laugh or a sob. You are strange, Thomas Chen. Strange and foolish and brave. Just doing what needs doing. They emerged from the final jump into Earth's solar system. Thomas felt a surge of emotion seeing the familiar sight of Luna hanging beside the blue-green marble of his homeworld. He'd been away from Earth for 3 years. From this angle, with the sun rising over the Pacific, it looked like paradise. Several Earth defense ships moved to intercept them, taking up positions around Kalithra's vessel. A voice crackled over the comm. Unidentified Dragon-class vessel. This is Earth Defense Force ship Determination. State your business. Thomas grabbed the comm. Determination. This is Thomas Chen, human citizen ID 847-3392. I'm aboard this ship voluntarily. We're here for medical supplies and consultation. No hostile intent. A pause, then. Chen, are you under duress? No, sir. I'm helping someone. Stand by for transfer of medical request documentation. Thomas sent over everything he'd compiled. The symptoms, his theories about chemical exposure, the request for Dr. Tanaka's expertise. He waited, watching the defense ships. Their weapons were powered up but not locked on. Yet. Chen, this is Captain Rodriguez on Determination. We've reviewed your request. Dr. Tanaka is being brought up from the surface now. She'll meet you at High Station 7 in 3 hours. But Chen, the dragon stays in orbit. We can't allow it close to any station. Thomas looked at Kalithra. The dragon's expression was unreadable, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. She'd been turned away from 3 stations already. Now his own people were doing the same. Understood, Captain. We'll maintain current distance. But, sir, my companion's name is Kalithra, not it. She's a person, and she's a mother trying to save her children. I'd appreciate it if we could remember that. Another pause, longer this time. Noted, Chen. Kalithra, you have Earth's word that you will not be attacked while in our space, provided you take no hostile action. Kalithra spoke, her voice filling the comm with thunder. You have my word, Captain Rodriguez. I seek only help, nothing more. Then let's see what we can do. High Station 7 was one of Earth's smaller orbital platforms, used primarily for research. When Thomas and Kalithra approached in a small shuttle, Dr. Tanaka was already waiting in the docking bay. She was a small woman with gray-streaked hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Thomas had met her once before, briefly, at a conference. She'd been kind to him, treating him like a person rather than just a janitor. He hoped she'd remember. She did. Chen, good to see you again, though I wish it were under better circumstances. I've reviewed your data. If your theory is correct, we're dealing with compound 77 kappa. Nasty stuff. Banned for good reason. Can you make an antidote? I can try, but I'll need a sample. Blood, preferably. Scales might work too. The problem is dragon biology. We don't have much data. Thomas turned to Kalithra, who had been silent since entering the station. She was too large to fully enter, so she waited just outside the airlock, her head visible through the transparent aluminum viewport. She needs your blood, Thomas explained, to make the antidote. Kalithra didn't hesitate. She extended one massive claw and scored it across her own forearm. Green blood, luminous and thick, welled up. Thomas quickly collected it in the sample containers Dr. Tanaka provided. This will take time, Tanaka warned. Maybe 12 hours, maybe more. I need to analyze the blood chemistry, model the interaction with 77 kappa, synthesize the antidote, and test it. If we get it wrong, the cure could kill them faster than the poison. They're already dying, Kalithra said. How long do they have? Dr. Tanaka looked at the readings on her tablet. Based on the symptom progression you've described, 3 days, maybe 4. Then work quickly, doctor, please. Tanaka nodded and headed toward her lab. Thomas wanted to follow, to help somehow, but he knew he'd just be in the way. Instead, he stayed with Kalithra. They sat together in silence for a long time, the dragon outside the station, the human just inside. Earth rotated slowly beneath them, cities sparkling like jewels against the dark continents. Why did you help me? Kalithra asked finally. You had everything to lose, nothing to gain. Why? Thomas thought about it. My dad died when I was 12. Cancer. Earth medicine wasn't advanced enough to save him back then. I remember watching my mom beg the doctors to try something, anything. They said they'd done all they could. She was so desperate, so helpless. I never wanted to see that look on anyone's face again. When I saw you at the station, that's what I saw. That same desperation. I am not human. My pain should mean nothing to you. Pain is pain. It doesn't matter what species feels it. Other species do not think as you do. They see only threats and opportunities. You see people. Yeah, well, maybe that's humanity's thing. We're not the strongest or the smartest. We can't breathe underwater or see in infrared, but we've got empathy. Sometimes I think it's the only thing we've got that's worth anything. Kalithra's golden eyes fixed on him. If my children survive, they will know your name. Dragons remember debts, Thomas Chen. We remember kindness even more. Dr. Tanaka worked through the night. Thomas dozed in the station's break room, startled awake every few hours by status updates. The antidote was complex. Dragon biology was weird. The chemical breakdown wasn't cooperating. Another few hours, just a bit longer. He brought Kalithra food from the station commissary, though she barely touched it. She was focused on something far away, her eyes distant, probably thinking of her children, alone and scared in their nest. 18 hours after they'd arrived, Dr. Tanaka emerged from the lab. She looked exhausted but triumphant. In her hand was a case containing 5 syringes filled with glowing blue liquid. I've done everything I can, she said. This should neutralize the compound and repair the neurological damage. But I've never tested it on dragons. In theory, it'll work. In practice, she shrugged helplessly. It's all we have, Kalithra said. She took the case in one massive claw, holding it as carefully as if it were made of spider silk. Thank you, doctor. If this works, my family owes you a debt. If this works, I'm publishing the hell out of this research, Tanaka replied with a tired grin. Do you know how hard it is to get dragon biology data? You've just advanced xenomedicine by a decade. Now go save your kids. The flight back to the Shattered Belt took 30 hours. Kalithra pushed her ship to its limits, jumping through dangerous shortcuts that made Thomas's stomach revolt. But he didn't complain. Every minute mattered now. They emerged from the final jump into an asteroid field so dense it looked like a wall. Kalithra navigated through it with ease, her ship dancing between rocks the size of mountains. Finally, they came to a larger asteroid, maybe 2 miles across. It had been hollowed out, creating a cave system that glowed with bioluminescent lichen. This was Kalithra's nest, her home. Inside, 5 young dragons lay on beds of soft, crystal grass. They were each about the size of a horse, their scales dull and cracking. Their breathing was labored. The smallest one, Keth, was unconscious. Thomas's heart broke at the sight. They looked so fragile, so small. He'd imagined dragons as indestructible monsters. These were just kids, sick kids. Kalithra moved among them with a mother's practiced efficiency. She administered the injections one by one, speaking softly in a language Thomas didn't understand. The young dragons stirred weakly, too ill to do more than whimper. Then they waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Nothing changed. The young dragons continued to struggle for breath. Keth's eyes remained closed. Did it not work? Kalithra's voice was hollow. Thomas checked the medical scanner Tanaka had given him. The compound is in their systems. It's working on the cellular level. But this kind of healing takes time. We just have to... Keth's eyes opened. The small dragon lifted her head, confused and weak, but her eyes were clear, alert. She looked at her mother and made a soft, chirping sound. Kalithra collapsed. Thomas had never seen a dragon cry before. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Tears like molten silver tracked down her scaled cheeks as she gathered her children close, all 5 of them now stirring, now waking, now healing. Thomas quietly left the nest chamber. They needed family time. He could wait. He found a spot outside where he could see the stars and sat down on a rock. His comm unit beeped. Messages from Earth, from Julie, from the station he'd worked at. He ignored them all. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. A janitor from Earth had saved 5 dragon children. It felt surreal. Tomorrow he'd have to figure out what came next. Whether he still had a job, whether he'd face legal consequences, whether Krell would make good on his threat. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. 5 kids were alive. That was enough. He heard movement behind him. Kalithra emerged from the nest, looking more at peace than Thomas had ever seen her. They sleep now, she said. True sleep, without pain. Dr. Tanaka says they will need several more doses over the coming week, but the worst has passed. I'm glad, Thomas said, and he meant it. You understand you have changed everything? Kalithra settled beside him, her massive form somehow seeming smaller, less intimidating. Dragons do not forget. You showed kindness when no one else would. You risked everything for children not your own. My people will hear of this. They will know that humanity, despite its frailty, possesses a strength other species lack. Thomas shrugged. I just did what was right. Precisely. That is what makes it remarkable. In a galaxy where most species act only in self-interest, humanity acts from compassion. Your people are young, weak by the standards of the elder races. But you have something they lost long ago. You have hope and heart. She reached out with one claw and gently tapped Thomas on the chest. The gesture was so incongruous, so tender, that Thomas couldn't help but smile. When you return to your space, Kalithra continued, you will find things different. I have already sent messages to the dragon clans. You now have our protection. Anyone who harms Thomas Chen answers to us, and your Earth as well. Any ship bearing your world's mark may travel through the deep dark without fear. Thomas blinked. That's a big deal. The deep dark has resources no one else can access. Trade routes that would cut travel time in half. It is the least we can do, but there is more. I am old, Thomas Chen. I have lived 4,000 of your years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species grow powerful, then collapse under the weight of their own cruelty. And I will tell you a truth that other species do not want to hear. She leaned in close, her golden eyes reflecting the starlight. Humanity's weakness is also its strength. You are fragile. You die easily. Your lives are brief candles in the cosmic dark. But because of this, you value life. You cherish it. You fight for it. Not just your own lives, but the lives of others, even strangers, even those who could easily kill you. The galaxy needs that. The elder species have grown cold. They have forgotten what it means to care. They see the universe as a series of transactions, resources to exploit, competitors to dominate. They have lost their souls. Humanity still has its soul, and if your species survives, if you grow strong without losing your compassion, you might just remind the rest of us what we've forgotten. Thomas didn't know what to say. The weight of her words pressed down on him. He was just a janitor, just one guy trying to do the right thing. How could that possibly matter in a galaxy of billions? But maybe that was the point. Maybe it didn't take a hero. Maybe it just took someone willing to care. I should get you back to your Earth, Kalithra said. Your people will be worried, and my children need their rest. Before we go, Thomas said, can I meet them? Your kids? Kalithra's expression softened. They would like that. The young dragons were awake when Thomas entered the nest chamber again. They looked much better already, their scales beginning to regain their luster. They clustered around their mother, chirping and clicking. Kalithra spoke to them in the dragon language. Thomas caught his name in the stream of sounds. The young dragons turned to look at him with eyes that ranged from gold to green to startling blue. The smallest one, Keth, approached him carefully. She was still weak, but there was curiosity in her gaze. She sniffed at Thomas, her nostrils flaring. Then, very gently, she bumped her head against his chest. She says thank you, Kalithra translated. They all do. Thomas reached out and carefully touched Keth's scales. They were warm and smooth, like river stones in the sun. Tell them they're welcome, and tell them to listen to their mom and not go exploring old battlefields anymore. Kalithra relayed this. The young dragons made sounds that were unmistakably sheepish. Thomas laughed. Kids were the same everywhere, apparently, no matter the species. The journey back to Earth was quieter. Thomas spent most of it sleeping, the exhaustion finally catching up with him. When he woke, they were in orbit around his homeworld once more. I am told you should check your communication device, Kalithra said. Many people have been trying to reach you. Thomas pulled out his comm unit. 347 messages. He scrolled through them, his eyes widening. His supervisor, Zix, had messaged, "You're either crazy or brilliant, possibly both. Report to HR when you return. Promotions do not process themselves." From Julie, "Tommy, you're famous. It's all over the news. Human janitor saves dragon children. They're calling you a hero. Also, please call me. I'm worried." From Dr. Tanaka, "Chen, I need you to come back to the station. We need to discuss payment. Dragons don't use credits. They use something much more interesting. You're going to want to sit down for this." From Krell, the station commander, "Chen, I may have been hasty. When you return, your position will be waiting, along with a formal apology. Apparently having dragon allies is good for business. Who knew?" From diplomatic channels, "Mr. Chen, this is Ambassador Williams of Earth's Galactic Relations Committee. We need to speak urgently regarding your recent actions and their implications for human-dragon relations. Also, well done." And dozens more, from news agencies, from other humans working in galactic space, from species he'd never heard of. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. Everyone wanted to know about the janitor who had done what diplomats and warriors hadn't dared. "Looks like I'm not invisible anymore," Thomas muttered. "Is that what you want?" Kalithra asked. "To be seen?" Thomas thought about it. Part of him wanted to say yes. He'd been overlooked his entire life. Finally, people were paying attention. But another part of him, the larger part, remembered why he'd helped in the first place. Not for glory, not for recognition, just because it needed doing. "I want to do good work," he said finally. "Whether people see it or not, that's enough. You are a strange creature, Thomas Chen, but I think that is why I like you." They arranged for Thomas to shuttle down to High Station 7. Before he left, Kalithra stopped him. "This is not goodbye," she said. "You are welcome in my nest any time. My children wish to know you better. And I would call you friend, if you permit it." Thomas smiled. "Permission granted. Friends." The dragon bowed her head. Then she did something unexpected. She pulled a scale from her chest. It came loose with a soft pop and a shimmer of light. She handed it to Thomas. "A token. It marks you as kin to the dragon clans. Should you ever need help, hold this and call. We will come." The scale was warm in Thomas's hand, about the size of his palm. It glowed faintly with inner light, shifting between green and gold. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "Thank you," he managed, "for everything. It is I who should thank you. You saved my children. You saved my heart. There is no greater gift." Thomas took the shuttle down to the station. As he stepped out into the docking bay, he was immediately swarmed by reporters, officials, and more people than he'd ever seen in one place. They shouted questions, cameras flashed, security tried to hold them back. Through the crowd, he saw Julie pushing her way forward. When she reached him, she pulled him into a hug so tight he couldn't breathe. "You idiot," she sobbed into his shoulder. "You wonderful, brave, stupid idiot. Don't ever scare me like that again." "Sorry," Thomas said, "but I'd do it again." "I know. That's what scares me." Ambassador Williams found him an hour later, after security had cleared the crowd. The ambassador was a tall woman with steel-gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude. "Mr. Chen, you've created quite a situation." "Sorry?" "Don't apologize. You've done more for human-dragon relations in 3 days than my entire department has managed in 15 years. The dragons are offering us trade agreements, safe passage through their territories, and access to knowledge they've never shared with anyone, all because you helped one mother save her children." She handed him a tablet. On it was a contract. Thomas skimmed it, his eyes going wide at the numbers. "This is your new salary. The dragons don't use credits, as you know. They use dragon glass, a crystallized energy source worth about 1,000 credits per gram. They've offered payment for your services. The Earth government is converting it to credits and establishing a trust in your name. Mr. Chen, you're a very wealthy man." Thomas stared at the numbers. He could pay off his sister's debts, send her kids to the best schools, buy a house, never work again if he didn't want to. "What do I have to do?" he asked warily. Ambassador Williams smiled. "Keep being you. The dragons want to establish formal relations with humanity. They want you as the liaison, part diplomat, part consultant, well, friend. They trust you. That's rarer than you might think. I'm not a diplomat, I'm a janitor. You're whatever you choose to be. But if you take this job, you won't be cleaning floors anymore. You'll be building bridges between species, helping others the way you helped Calithra." Thomas thought about it, about the simple life he'd had before, the quiet routine, the invisibility. Part of him missed it already, but a larger part of him remembered the look in Calithra's eyes when her children woke up, the feeling of knowing he'd made a real difference. "Okay," he said, "I'll do it, but on one condition. Name it. I want to establish a fund for people in need, humans, aliens, whoever, for medical emergencies they can't afford, for situations where the system fails them. I've got more money than I need. Let's use it to help others." Ambassador Williams's smile widened. "Mr. Chen, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship between you and us, and between humanity and the dragons." Over the next weeks, Thomas settled into his new life. It was strange being recognized everywhere he went. Stranger still having people actually listen to him. But he adapted. He always had been good at adapting. He traveled between Earth and the Dragon territories, helping negotiate agreements and solve problems. He learned the dragon language, or at least enough to get by. He watched Calithra's children grow stronger, their scales shining, their laughter echoing through the nest. Other species watched humanity warily now. The little prey species had gained powerful allies, and they'd done it not through force or manipulation, but through simple kindness. It changed the calculus. Maybe humans weren't as weak as everyone had thought. Thomas received a message one day from Zix, his old supervisor. "Chen, the station is not the same without you. The floors are dirty, and nobody curses at broken equipment with quite your creativity. But I am proud. You took the skills of a janitor and cleaned up a mess nobody else would touch. Very on brand." Thomas laughed. He missed the work sometimes, the simplicity of a mop and bucket. but he'd found a new kind of cleaning to do. Not floors, but relationships. Not stains, but prejudices. It was harder work, but more rewarding. 6 months after that day in the station corridor, Thomas attended a galactic summit on Station Gamma 7, the same station where everything had started. He wore formal clothes now instead of a custodial uniform. He sat at tables with diplomats and officials, but he never forgot where he came from. During a break in negotiations, he walked past his old custodial closet. It was being used by someone else now, a young Chirrut who looked overwhelmed by the task. Thomas stopped and showed them the trick to getting stubborn stains out of the tile. The Chirrut's antennae perked up in surprise that someone important would help them. "Everyone's important," Thomas said. "Don't let anyone tell you different." That evening, Calithra arrived at the station for the formal signing of the Human-Dragon Alliance. She was accompanied by her 5 children, now almost full-grown. They moved through the corridors with grace and power, and everyone scrambled to get out of their way. Except Thomas. He stood his ground, grinning, as Keth bounded up to him and nearly knocked him over with an enthusiastic greeting. "She has been practicing your language," Calithra said. "She wanted to tell you something herself." Keth carefully formed the words with her massive jaws. "Thank you, friend, Thomas." Thomas felt tears prick his eyes. "You're welcome, Keth, anytime." The signing ceremony was attended by representatives from across the galaxy. The treaty established formal relations between humanity and the dragon clans. It granted humans access to territories previously forbidden. It established cultural exchange programs and mutual defense agreements. But the most important part, the part that made Thomas proud, was Article 7. In recognition of the principle that kindness transcends species, both parties agree to render aid to those in need, regardless of political or economic considerations. Compassion is not weakness. It is the foundation upon which lasting peace is built. Commander Krell, who had tried to stop Thomas from leaving with Calithra, approached him after the ceremony. All 4 of his arms were extended in a Vacrosian gesture of respect. "Chen, I owe you an apology. I was wrong about you, wrong about the dragons, wrong about what truly matters in this galaxy." "You were scared," Thomas said. "That's okay. We all get scared. But you acted anyway. That is the difference between us." Thomas shook one of Krell's hands. "We all do what we can, Commander. That's all any of us can do." As the celebration continued around him, Thomas slipped away to a quiet observation deck. He looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness between them. So much space, so many species, so many problems that seemed too big to solve. But he'd learned something important. You didn't have to solve everything. You just had to help when you could. One person at a time, one act of kindness at a time. It might not change the whole galaxy, but it changed someone's galaxy. And that was enough. Calithra found him there, her massive form reflected in the transparent aluminum viewport. "What are you thinking, my friend?" she asked. "That I'm glad I didn't run away that day, when I saw you in the corridor." "As am I. You know, the other dragons ask me why I chose to trust a human. Of all the species in the galaxy, why approach one of the weakest?" "What do you tell them?" "That humanity's weakness is an illusion. You are not weak. You are brave beyond reason. You are kind beyond logic. You are stubborn beyond sense. These are not weaknesses. These are the qualities that will carry you far." She paused, then added softly, "The elder species have forgotten something important. Power fades, technology advances, empires fall, but kindness, compassion, the willingness to help a stranger, these things echo through eternity. They change the universe in ways that weapons and wealth never can." "You taught me that, Thomas Chen. A janitor with a mop and a heart bigger than the stars. You reminded me what matters. And for that, my people will remember you long after the mountains have worn to dust." Thomas didn't know what to say to that, So he simply stood beside his friend and watched the stars wheel overhead, feeling smaller and larger than he'd ever felt before. Smaller because the universe was so vast, larger because he'd made a difference in it. Somewhere out there, 5 young dragons were alive because a janitor had cared, because a human had said yes when everyone else said no. Because sometimes courage wasn't about being strong, it was about being kind. And that, Thomas thought, was a lesson the whole galaxy needed to learn. Maybe, just maybe, humanity could teach it to them. Not with weapons or threats, but with compassion, with heart, with the stubborn refusal to walk away when someone needed help. Humanity, fuck yeah. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were the smartest, but because when everyone else saw danger, humans saw people. When everyone else saw risk, humans saw need. When everyone else said no, humans said yes. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. And Thomas Chen, former janitor, current dragon liaison, and forever friend to those in need, would make sure that gift was shared far and wide. The stars shone overhead. In the distance, Earth turned slowly. Somewhere, someone needed help. And somewhere, Thomas knew, a human would answer that call. Because that's what humans did. They showed up. They cared. They helped. And that made all the difference.